Again, talking about design guidelines, here is the example of the West Valley design guideline and the different ways that the size and dimensions the logo needs to be, the location of where the logo needs to be, a reverse version of the logo, how colors are used, what is the Pantone colors or what are the values, these are Pantone mostly, tints of the color. So, in addition, we have design standards. So, hopefully this link still works. Here it is. So, I was talking briefly earlier about the National Park Service. Okay, so the National Park Service has a guideline that everybody needs to follow. And so, back in the 80s, they came up with a guideline that because before the 80s, what was happening was each national park was making their own kind of brochure. And so if you went to Yosemite, it looked one way. You went to Yellowstone National Park, it looked another way, and another way, another way. It was not inconsistent. So the National Park Service came up with the guidelines to follow. And I thought it was good for you to see that. And look, they have the same kind of thing like West Valley had, you know, as far as the size needs to be a certain way. So, again, the brochure produced by Harper's Ferry Center are full color printed and recycled paper. Planning a new brochure. And so then they have guidelines that you need to follow when you're planning a new brochure. And then they have a designer and so on. Then they talk about, they used to have information about size and stuff. Let me go back. Oh, and then they have templates to follow. And you can follow a template. They have larger print brochures for accessibility issues. They talk about software, so you can download a guideline to follow. And they talk about illustrations and how they should be. They talk about style and usage. How the name should be, how the park name needs to be, make sure it's authorized by Congress. Then they have the National Parks Graphic Identity Program, standard for digital image files. Look at this. They have a whole specification, dots per inch, what file format, and so on. They also have identity program, how the arrowhead should be used, right? Business cards, the typeface that needs to be used. They have a specific one. Look, it's been specifically designed for the Park Service. Then they have their templates. Again, finding templates. And so, you know, following design guidelines is rather important. Especially size, probably, and the way the folds are and everything. Again, it brings meaning to all the parks so that when you go from one to the other to the other. I've been trying to collect them all. I got ones from Alaska. I got the White House. I've been in the White House twice. Once when Richard Nixon was in office. Shows you how old I am. And once when, was it Clinton or Bush? It was George W. Yeah. So I got the White House one. I've been collecting all of them. So it's fun to collect them if you go around and get them. In addition, many years ago, we used to make a lot of DVDs. And following design guidelines is a good way. And there used to be a company called Disc Makers. And they were in... they're in Berkeley now. But if you wanted to have a CD made or a DVD made, you could have Disc Makers make it for you. Oh, why am I this? No, I don't want that. Oh, they've changed, but they have templates there. So whenever you wanted to make a DVD or CD, they all have specific sizes. You have to follow specific dimensions for the logo. A disc, if you know, is spelled D-I-S-C, right? A disc, audio disc, right? Or DVD disc. What does the C stand for? Right? If you buy a hard drive in a computer, it's called D-I-S-K, right? Disc. Disc. Why is one with a K and one with a C? What's the difference? This one uses a laser. This one's magnetic. Magnetic laser. Hey, I had to point that out. But this whole disc right here is actually, and this is a standard logo. If you look on your DVDs, they're standard. They have to have specific size and all that. The disc is the kind of thing. So in this case, there's templates for that too, as well as a jewel case. We refer to this as a jewel case right here, right? It's a jewel case. And then how it's printed on here has a specific size. You can download your Illustrator template or your InDesign, Photoshop, or Quark Express even, or CorelDRAW. You can download the templates from disc makers. And here you go. You see the jewel case. Jewel case, Digipack, jacket template, Echo wallet. I don't know what that is. DVD template. So all these can be downloaded. And they even have fonts you could use. So you can follow standards that way too. So no matter what product you're working on, think about that before you start working on anything. Do I need to follow the standard for the logo? Do I need to follow a design standard for the brochure I'm making? Do I need to download a template for a DVD? If you're making a DVD in a jewel case, this is probably the best place to go right here. Disc Makers is the largest DVD manufacturer right here. So just think about those things. I just wanted to talk about that briefly today. The reason why I talk about that right now is because I'm going to talk to you about making a poster. We're going to learn some Illustrator tools. We're going to learn about some mostly blending, some more blending of features. We're going to learn about some brushes, in learning different brushes today. We're going to be practicing, again, the brushes and things like that. So in order to do that, though, I like to talk about making a poster using what we call the WPA. And what is the WPA? Well, back in the Depression, the federal government got into the business of helping people. And by helping people, specifically artists, they wanted to help them by commissioning them to make things. And a lot of things that they commissioned to make were posters, okay? And we refer to these as the WPA posters. So let's look at some of the posters that, if I can find them. Oh, there we go. Let me open this in a new window. So again, what is the WPA? The WPA was called the Works Progress Administration. WPA was the largest and most ambitious American New Deal agency. Public Works, of course. Every one of the public works had to have posters and artwork along with it. And so they commissioned a lot of artists to work on things. Now, the reason why I kind of talk about it now is because the posters back in the time followed a certain look and feel. And the reason why I want you to talk about it is because I want you to design a poster that has that look and feel. Okay, so we're going to look at the samples. We're going to look at the examples. And I'm going to want you to design something that follows that kind of look and feel. Kind of like what you did with your artist, right? I said, hey, you choose your artist and kind of design a poster, an artist statement. Well, this one's a little bit different. I don't want you to do columns of text. I just want maybe a headline and an illustration and maybe a phrase. And they have some examples here, I think. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, here's some examples. And so here's one. You see, one of the things about the way they look is the way the poster looks a certain way is because of the typography back in the 30s. We didn't have all the typefaces. A lot of the things were drawn by hand. And the type of printing, okay, when we look at the poster, this is not a full color maybe. The whole way of using offset lithography to do the color separation, right? Because we haven't really talked about printing too much in this class. That's why we're talking about it now. But, during the 50s and 60s, they figured out how to do color separations really well, and by using cameras and screens and pulling different colors out of a photograph to be able to print it so it looks like a full continuous color. And of course back in the 30s they really didn't have that. They did have some colors, but it was more of a graphical style, more of an illustrator style, right? More of an illustrator style. So here's a concert in Central Park on a certain day. You can see the kids playing here. Nice graphic here. Okay, so I want you to think about making a poster. I'm going to talk about different illustrator techniques to do this, some that we haven't even looked at yet, 3D tools and things like that. But again, more flat-looking examples. I don't know why I got to this. Oh, this is Library of Congress. You can search for more. I guess that's where that one came from. Sketching your idea. There's a video about sketching your idea ahead of time. Oh, this guy is. It's a really long video. It's very poor quality video, but this guy is great. He just talks about how sketching is the most important thing you can do in any field. It's like any field that you're in, you should sketch out your idea. And he talks about that. And he goes on for about an hour and a half. Look, it's a very bad quality video. It's hard to see, but it's not what he's showing you. It's what he's saying. So if you got time, I highly recommend watching this guy. He's a really good talker. It was kind of long, hour and a half. Just maybe watch the first half hour, but he really talks about really good stuff. I really liked his talk. So I linked that up there. Make it a little bigger if you want. 11 by 17, 11 by 14. And then I had some other ones. Let me see. There's another video. This is Julia. Okay, this was a talk about inspiring. I don't know what that was. Okay, so there's some links there on Angel. And then this was, oh, I wanted to open this in a new window. Hold on. This is the main reading as far as the WPA stuff. Okay, so here's some examples. I got a book from the library. I got a book from the library, and I scanned some of the pages for you. And I just wanted to talk briefly about the style. Again, back in the 30s, printing, offset lithography was very rudimentary. They didn't have the full color printing process. So you'll see most of the posters have a graphic image that describes what the poster's about. That's some kind of title and maybe a date. Okay? Very simple. This one was quite nice. This one from Puerto Rico here, if I could zoom in a little bit here. A lot of them might have had traveling, getting people to go places and spend money. That's what the most important thing to getting the U.S. out of the Depression was people making money and spending it. Right? That's how the economy works. So they had some travel posters. Very nice. Look at this. Visit Puerto Rico. Again, very graphic, illustrator style. Okay, we're going to go again. We're going to talk about brush strokes and things like that, and some other gradient options that we talk about when we get to the demo. Again, more of a travel poster. This was very popular kind of way of demonstrating people with the little head and the bigger body. Very graphic style. Again, following, of course, they were very influenced by the Bauhaus design from the, you know, from the 1930s and 20s, from German Bauhaus design. Very flat design. Broadway poster here. Notice how the typography, mostly hand drawn, probably hand drawn. This is not typeset there. Kind of like the Toulouse-Lautrec posters a little bit. Very graphical style. There's the California one. Even had a gradient in there. Very difficult to print a gradient consistently on an offset lithography, but somebody got away with it there. They had the Mission, Golden Gate Bridge. Oh no, that's the Bay Bridge, isn't it? Bay Bridge. The zoo one, quite fun. Animals interacting with the typography. Again, it didn't have the full color, so they went with more of a graphical style. Visit Illinois. I don't know. I guess, is Illinois birthplace of Lincoln or something? They have a little log cabin here, huh? Again, very graphical style. Very Americanized, patriotic. Of course, World War II was just around the corner. Look at the zoo ones. They're cute. Panda, elephants. All these are probably going to be extinct in another 10 years. The elephant's gone. Panda gone. But hey, back in the 30s, they were still around. Oh, look at the pet. Like the dog one. Again, very graphical styles. Look at that. Okay. So my example today is going to be more like this, or like this actually. Okay, I kind of recreate this in my demonstration today. What I'm looking for you to demonstrate today is how to do a gradient with a transparency. So you can get the light like this. See how the light comes through? Okay. So we're going to talk about making a gradient. So this kind of light like this. So we're going to actually recreate this kind of poster right here with the trees in the background and stuff like that. So we're going to kind of recreate. Now, I've already made a video for this, but we can record it also again. But I have a video of this demonstration already. And then, you know, see things like that. And so there's some examples there. Let's quickly look at what other students have done, and then we'll get started. I have some examples of what other students have done. Hold on, let me save it. So you know, this is a very creative kind of assignment for you. I want you to make something here that you can follow, and you can. Oh, jeez, the wrong one. Where did it go? There it is. This one was quite nice. It's a simple graphic. Some typography. Probably I would have made the type a little bigger, stretch it out a little bit more maybe. But this was a nice one. This was a student example there. Kind of a graphic bocce ball in the park. Save water. I don't know. That was. This was more of a poster for school, but you know, it has that kind of style. Remember, kind of graphical, flat design. This is something. Too much color though. The posters wouldn't have had that much color. Some of them did. This one was quite nice. I like the typography. Again, including the WPA logo is a good idea. So this is like a poster for a theater show. Nice sort of flat. That's a nice one. So again, just think of look at some of the posters, maybe do some research, and come up with an idea. You can quickly do this. This is not something, hopefully, it takes you too many hours to do. Probably coming up with the idea takes longer than drawing it. Kind of a driving, remember, they had a lot of tourism posters because they wanted people to go places, right? Tourism poster. Oh, this one's one of my favorites. I really like this one. This is the first year I gave this assignment. And this student came up with this. Well, what a great graphic, huh? Right? No, it's very graphic oriented, very flat, plain color background, so on. So, what do you think? Think graphical, think big illustration that interacts with the typography, right? Like this one. See how the typography kind of interacts with the layout. Very nice example here. Okay, let's get started. Again, I kind of make a poster with trees and some lights coming through. I'm not using headlights. I use the moon. And the moon is shining down onto a tree scene. And the most important thing is sort of how to get the moon to kind of glow with a gradient. We're going to use a gradient with transparency to the gradient. Transparency to the gradient. And I'll show you what I mean. So let me log out of here and let's get to Illustrator. So let me draw the scene on the board for you a little bit. So again, I'm doing a poster. It's going to be this way, okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some redwood trees, kind of, and well, maybe pine trees we'll call them. And so they're going to be very graphic oriented. They're kind of cheesy like this, but you know, it's kind of it's a poster. So they're going to be trees that kind of have this kind of look to them, you know, a color here and a different kind of bark here. This will have a bark texture, and so we'll have several of them. That, and have some trees like that, trees like that. Then we're going to have kind of a pond look graphic down there. Then I can't remember what I did over here. I think I had kind of a grassy field here, and some more trees. And there's some depth here. I have some smaller trees. Go back in there. Smaller trees go back in there. Smaller trees. But the most important thing for this example is I'm going to have a moon, big moon that's in the top up here. A little moon with this little moon dots on it. And I'm going to have a kind of a gradient come down like this. It's highlighting. And then I have words that show up in the pond. I'm trying to remember what the words I wrote for this example. But the highlight comes down like this, and it's kind of shining. And then I have like a little highlight on the edge of the trees, a little highlight on one side of the edge of the trees, so that it looks like the light is kind of coming on the one side. But this gradient is going to be a gradient that comes down, and you can have a transparency of the gradient. So it's a little bit, it's still gradient here, but it's a little bit more solid, and as it gets further away, it diffuses. Okay, so it looks like that it's really light coming down. Now, of course, the poster might not look. It would be tough to do in the poster for the WPA, that kind of diffusion. But it was some technique I wanted to show. So it's more flat of the trees. So that's sort of the illustration that I did last time, and I kind of liked it. So we're going to do something similar. Again, I'm going to start with a new document inside of Illustrator. And I'm going to do something a little bit bigger. If you remember, I said, you know, it's a poster size, so maybe 11 by 17 or 11 by 14 is okay. maybe 11 by 14. And since it's being printed, I'm going to use CMYK. CMYK. I'm going to hit OK. Uh-oh. How did I get 4? Oh, I said 4 artboards? Is that what I said? 4 artboards?
It says 4.
Oh, somebody... Did I use 4 artboards? 1 artboard. So I'm going to start off by making a kind of a background. Since this is a night scene, I'm going to give a solid kind of bluish background and then a kind of a brownish kind of part at the bottom. So to give it a nice simple background, I'm going to use the rectangle tool with no stroke, and I'm going to give it a color, kind of an evening blue color. And kind of like we did when we made the first landscape. Remember when we made the first landscape in class? Kind of a background color. Then I'm going to make a kind of another rectangle at the bottom. That one's going to have a brown kind of color. A brown color, if I can find a brown. Ooh, that's pretty ugly brown. There we go. It's tough to get a brown color. So I have kind of a scene that's kind of, and it's kind of hard to see something, so I'm going to hide that actually. So again, I'm going to use a lot of layers in this example today. A lot of layers. And again, you should get used to using your layer window. And I know this is my background. But you know what? I'm going to make a new layer above that, and this is going to be my trees. So again, I just made a background, and it'll come into play a little bit later. But this is kind of, I wanted to have my poster have that, because there's going to be a lot of glowy kind of looking things. So I'm just going to either lock or hide that. I'm going to hide it so it doesn't kind of interfere with what I'm doing above. So you can see it. If I just have a blue background, you're not going to be able to see anything. So again, the example, I'm kind of doing a redwood forest. A redwood forest. So in my redwood forest, I have some trees. I'm going to draw. You can either use the pencil tool or your famous pen tool if you want. And I'm going to draw a tree trunk, a big one, kind of a big tree trunk. A big tree trunk. And I'm going to give it a texture. I'm going to give it a texture. Yeah?
How did you lock it and make the background light?
There's an eyeball.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So I ain't going to worry about that background. I might not even use it. I just turned it off for now. I just made one so I remember to make one later. To make the redwood tree texture, my redwood tree texture, again, if you remember how to make a texture, you could either do it outside the visible area or inside the visible area. I'm going to use different colors, and I'm going to draw some lines. Whoosh, not like that. Let me zoom in a little bit. I'm going to zoom in actually on my tree itself, and I'm going to draw it right over top of my tree. There's one line, 2 lines, 3 lines. I need some red in there. Some red color here. Red. There we go. There we go. A little red. It's a redwood tree, right? redwood tree. So again, all I'm doing is, zoom in. I'm adding kind of a bark kind of look. You know what? You've seen redwood trees, right? They have these little barks that kind of go horizontal. What is it? Vertical, right? Vertical down like that. So I'm gonna make this one dark, 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 dark. There we go. Kind of a dark there. When you're done drawing your texture, so I just drew a bunch of lines, kind of looking like a bark kind of tree. I'm going to, again, I'm going to select everything but the tree. So I'm going to draw a box around that and then deselect the tree. So again, you don't need to have it over top of it. I just drew it over top of it so I knew what size to make it. But once you draw a texture like this, you can save it as a texture. I know we're using the newer version of Illustrator, so you're going to use the pop-up texture making window, which we've already seen. It's the pattern options. Pattern options. And in the pattern options, I can say make pattern, and it's going to go into the pattern making mode like it always does. Here's the pattern making mode. I'm just going to hit done. I'm not going to mess with it. So again, to make a pattern, you've done it before, I'm sure of that, is under Window, Pattern Options, right? And then New Pattern, Make Pattern. Then it goes into Pattern Making Tool, and then you get out. Once you're done making your pattern, you don't need this anymore. You can delete this if you want. To fill my tree in with my pattern, I could go to my swatches window. My swatches, and your pattern should be in there. Boom. Ooh, that looks horrible, doesn't it? Oh, that looks horrible. Horrible. How about this one? Whoosh. That's about one of the ugliest textures I ever made. It looked good when I was making it, didn't it? How about this? Let's not do that. How about we apply... Here's how I'm going to do it. Have my tree trunk color. I'm going to go to my appearance window, right? Appearance window. In the appearance window, I'm going to add my new fill, and then apply the pattern to that. There we go. And then turn the opacity down a little bit. There we go. That looks like a better. Okay. So I have a tree with a texture. Do you remember using the appearance window? Right? In the appearance window, we can have more than one fill. And so if we have the fill over top of it, then we can have an opacity on that fill, which then will reduce the amount. Again, I went to the appearance window. I added a new fill. Right here is new fill. Once you have a new fill, you can apply your texture to that and then turn your opacity down. That looks like a better tree. Better tree. Okay. Next, I'm going to draw my green part for my tree. To do that, I'm going to use the don't do that yet. Deselect first. There we go. So the green part for my tree, I'm going to use the pencil tool, but before I use the pencil tool, I'm going to test it first. Okay, I'm going to put a green color in there. And I'm going to test it first over here. Kind of make a pine tree looking thing. Ooh, no, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good. Hold on. Here we go. Let's try. I'm using the pencil tool. I want to kind of, that's what I want. Maybe go across. There we go. That's what I wanted. There we go. Let's put that over top. There we go. There's my tree. How about that? Is that better? Better. There's my tree. And of course, like I said before, the moon is going to be over here, and the sun's going to, or the moon rays are going to come down this way. So just like we did, do you remember the day when we were making the mountains? And I had kind of a 3D looking mountain with a highlight on one side. I'm going to kind of give myself a little highlight on my, oops, I'm going to highlight that. Give myself a little highlight on the side. There we go. Give him a little 3D look. Little highlight on the side. And let's turn our background on, see how it looks with the background. There we go. It's a little dark. This blue might be too dark. There we go. Oh, much better. Then to save money and time, I'm going to duplicate this tree. Save money and time. Maybe change it a little bit. Group it a little bit maybe so it doesn't get all crazy on you. Maybe change the color. I don't like that texture, do you? That texture's evil. Evil. It's okay on the first one. I like it on the second one. Make it darker. There we go. Yeah, that texture just didn't work out, did it? Okay, a couple trees, happy trees here, happy trees there. A couple happy trees there. Of course, these trees need to be flipped because the light beam's going to come down the middle here. There we go. Maybe skew them a little bit. Skew them. Skew them. So if you haven't really looked at there's a bunch of tools we haven't really used in here. So if I want to alter these trees right here, right now these trees are kind of boring. Let me change just a little bit more of these trees here. I want this color. Let me change this to a darker color. Just to be darker. There we go. A little bit different. Okay. There we go. That looks pretty good. Just so they're a little bit different. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is let me talk about some tools that we haven't discussed yet. So let's say we want to alter the shape of these trees and get them to kind of bend a little bit. To bend something is quite hard, but they have some tools that can be used to help you do things like that. And maybe not all of them together. Maybe let's bend just one first. So let's look at a tree for a moment. Okay, so too close. There we go. So let's see this tree right here. So I have this wonderful tree. Let me turn off the background so you can see it. Turn off the background here. And let me turn off all the other shapes. Whoops, not all of them, except for one. Is there a way to do that easily? I don't know. That's a good question. Probably is a way. Not those. There we go. Okay, so I have this beautiful tree right here, this beautiful tree, and I want to alter it. I want to maybe make the middle a little bit curved and the top a little bit bent. So how can I alter this tree? Well, inside Illustrator, they have all these different tools that you can use underneath Object, and they're all kind of down here. You have something called Paths, which we really haven't really looked at yet, but there's a way to alter one path, not a group. Then you have Shape, and that's not going to help us. Pattern, we already looked at that. We were making patterns before. Blend, well, I'm not going to do that. That's a little bit, let's not go there. But the one I want to talk about is the envelope. Envelope warp. Envelope mesh. Okay, and then there's one called perspective too, which you need to do with the different kind of object. But the one I want to use in this case is called the envelope. So how the envelope works is by putting a grid over top of your shape, and then you can use the points upon the grid to morph your shape. So do you remember the gradient mesh? Do you remember the gradient mesh? And in the gradient mesh you had little dots, and those dots were the colors inside the gradient mesh. Well, this is very similar to that, but instead of changing the color of a dot, you grab a dot and you move it, and when you grab a dot and move it, it changes the shape of the object. Watch how I do it. So I'm going to use make with mesh, and it's going to ask you what kind of grid you want. Now, a 4x4 is a very kind of a big grid. You can actually have more detail. So this is if you want to mess with it kind of large. You can actually go even into smaller detail. And if you hit preview, you can see the grid over top. So it puts a kind of a grid over top of your object, and then what you can do is you can grab the points and morph the shape of your object. So watch how I do that. If I hit OK here, what I want to do is kind of bend the middle of my shape here. I want to have my tree kind of curved, bent. I want my tree to be bent, basically. It's not a straight up tree. So what I could do is I could grab the points that are along the, well, that's the whole thing. You can grab a point. Oh, use the white selection tool, the white one, the direct select. And you can use the shift key to select more than one. So if I want just the middle, I can select all 4 of the middle ones here, and even the end ones here too if you want. and I can grab them and drag it like this. See how I'm curving it? Look at this. See how the lines are being curved? See that? And see, oh, now there's my tree. Do you see how it goes like that now? I'll show you the tool again. Let me start again. Let me undo that. Let me start from scratch. Undo scale. Okay, here we go. Select your object. Oh, it has the grid already on top of it. How do I put the grid on top? It's under Object, Envelope. Let me release for a moment. Let me start from scratch. Oh, now it's all messed up. There. Let me delete the grid. Okay, let me start from scratch. I have a tree. He's my tree. I want to morph the shape of my tree so it's not straight. An easy way to do that is to use something called a mesh, just like the gradient mesh you put over top. So I'm going to select my tree. It's all already grouped. It doesn't have to be grouped because it'll do anything you have selected, but this is grouped. I can go underneath Object, Envelope, Distort. You got Make with Warp and Make with Mesh. And Make with Top Object. I don't know what that is. That's a new one. But I know what Make with Mesh does. Again, what Make with Mesh does is it puts a grid over top, and you can hit the preview button and see there's your grid. When you hit OK, it puts a grid over top. Once that grid is over top, you can then use the white or direct selection tool, that's these ones right here, and I can grab points that are inside this grid to change the shape. So I can use, again, I'm using the white selection tool. I can grab points. Using the shift key, you can select more than one point too. And then once you select more than one point, you can move them. You can move a point. You can move one point at a time if you want. See how it's morphing that? Morphing that? There, see? This tree had a little bit of problems. The wind was blowing on it. The wind was blowing. And it's a very good, useful tool for manipulating the shape of an object. We're almost done. Almost done. We're going to do two more things. We're going to make the moon, and then the beam, and then a lake, and then some text. So again, I'm done. You got to see that. There we go. There's my distorted tree. So let me make my lake. I'm going to make a lake down here. So I'm going to make a new layer. Let me make a new layer. And this is the final layer here. And so I'm going to have a lake kind of down here. I'm going to use just the pencil tool and make myself a nice lake. If I can fit, oh, gotta select it first. There, a nice lake. Then I'm going to make a moon kind of at the top up here. You can use an ellipse tool. The problem with the ellipse tool is the moon is not really perfect, is it? I don't know. It's pretty perfect, I guess. I'm going to use the there he is. There's the moon. So I got a moon. So I guess the name of my play is going to be Moonbeam. How about that? We'll call this poster Moonbeam. Okay, Moonbeam. So the most important thing of what I wanted to show you today is how to make a moonbeam, kind of like you saw in the one poster where the lights were coming out of the car. How we're going to do that is I'm going to make a big kind of shape, and I'm going to fill that shape in with a gradient, but the gradient isn't going to be a solid gradient. It's going to be a gradient with transparency to it. So here we go. Moonbeam. Again, I'm just going to use the pen pen tool, and I'm going to make kind of a shape. So I'm going to start with the corner of my moon here. I'm going to click. The moonbeam's coming down here. Click. 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 So again, the moon is it's shining down onto my water. So I just made a shape using the pen tool. Four points, right? Click, 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 click. Whatever. Doesn't really matter. What's important is that we're making a gradient that has opacity or transparency to it. So it looks like the objects behind it are coming through, right? So it's a little bit difficult, but you have to work with your transparency. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring up my gradient window, right? Gradient. So go under Window, Gradient. Here's the gradient window. Now by default, the gradient's going to be black to white. So again, you have to get used to that. I don't know how to start the gradient with color unless you use one of the default ones that are here and alter that. You might want to do that. That might be a way to go. You might want to just cheat, and you see there's a orange and yellow gradient that's built into the swatches window here. If you click on that, boom, it'll give you that. That's a good starting point, I guess. You could start with that. I don't know. But that at least has color in it instead of it just being plain black and white. Again, I just chose this one. I don't know. Or the one next to it already has some opacity to it. This one kind of looks the way I want it to happen already, but it's going the wrong way. So in the swatches window, there's one that's already has a gradient on it. It's the one that says Fading Sky. It's in the swatches. If you don't see swatches, it's under Window, Swatches. You might want to start with that one because that one already has a gradient already to it. It's called Fading Sky. It's in the swatches window. Swatches. It's called Fading Sky. Now, of course, it's going the wrong way. It's going from top to bottom here. And what we really wanted to do is we wanted to go from where it goes from left to right. We wanted to go from top to bottom. So again, if you want to change the way that gradients work, there's a gradient tool right here. See the gradient tool right here? And so we can change it from top to bottom like that. But of course, we don't want it to be blue because the moon, well, maybe the moon does shine blue. I actually want it to be, I'm going to do kind of a yellowish color. There we go. Moonshine. There we go. Maybe not too yellow. There we go. I like a little yellow. And so, and then this color is maybe a yellow too. Or a white. And then of course you can alter the way it glows down by changing the points. Notice how each point has an opacity to it. So this point has 0 opacity. Do you see it? And this one has 100% opacity. 0% opacity, 100% opacity. So this might be too much. So I'm going to start at like 60 maybe, because the glow wouldn't leave the moon at 100%, would it? Probably not. So again, I would change this one right here to kind of an opacity here, maybe 60 or maybe even 50%. There we go. And then you can even extend this so that it comes down a little. It's glowing down a little bit further. Glows down a little further. And then of course, the glow wouldn't be coming from the middle of the moon. It would be from, so I might select the moon and bring it above. There we go. And maybe change the color of the moon so it has some kind of color to it. Right now, just ugly. Oops. There we go. There we go. Again, if you look closely at your gradient, it should be kind of glowing You really can't see, you can barely see it here, but you should, again, have an opacity on your gradient that gives you this kind of glow that comes down. Did you see how to do that? No. What didn't you see? What don't you see?
I was busy trying to do stuff, but it was hard to do both see and do.
Just make a rectangle and fill it in with this one is in the swatches window. It already has an opacity to it. The one that says blue fade. And then you can alter it in the gradient window so you can have an opacity. This one automatically has it. So again, this dot can have an opacity of 0. This dot could have an opacity of a certain level. Then of course you can put some text in there for your play. I'm going to call mine Moonshine. Moonshine. Like the drink, that's the designated drink from West Virginia, maybe. Moonshine. Moonshine. There we go. Moonshine. I don't know. Remember, your poster should have some kind of text in it, right? I don't know. I just kind of slapped that in there, but whatever you want to call yours. Yes. The state drinking in West Virginia might be moonshine.